Let me find where it says. I see. You should know that Arjuna and Kunti Devi are not in Krishna Loka, right? They are eternally associated with Krishna only in the material world. Right. All righty. Just bear with me again. Yeah. But, it's not that because Arjuna is so highly qualified is such an understatement that, he may not generally live there in the spiritual world, but he can go there if he wants. For him, that's nothing to go to the spiritual world. Let's just have a look here. Anyway, yeah. So he may not have gone there to live permanently, but he can go there, go and come, as he likes. Yeah. Okay, next one. When Vidura arrives, he's welcomed by all the family members, including women. It doesn't seem that the women were separated from others this time around, like it was in the case of arrival of Lord Krishna to Hastinapur. Please elaborate. Well, the ladies who were separated, they were up on the roofs of the buildings as Krishna was leaving Hastinapur and arriving in Dwaraka. Yeah, they were like the general ladies, if we could call them that. But the actual family members, the wives, mothers, and other ladies who are, in the very close circle of family members, they were there, like particularly when he arrived back in Dwaraka. Then his wives were there. Of course they were there. They're his wives. They lived together. His mothers and aunts. By mothers, I mean the older generation of familial relatives. They were there because they're part of the family. But the general, the ladies of the city, or cities, because it happened in different places, they were up on the roofs because they would not. How could they? There's millions of them. They can't just go and be with Krishna. Most of them wouldn't really know him at all personally. So it's the difference then between the general ladies, so to speak, and the ladies who were family. The ladies who were family, they were there. Yes. Bhagavatam 1:16-5. In the purport it is mentioned that Shonaka and the rishis were astonished to hear the pious Maharaj Parikshit punish the culprit and not kill him. Why is killing the punishment? Why is killing the punishment they're expecting for the culprit? Well, that's a good point. And I was just thinking about it today when we were in Santon, But you were not there, were you? No. You were there, though. I said, we were talking about the cows and the killing of the cows. And I said at one point, I read a verse, I think it was, which said you can't kill cows or shouldn't kill cows. And I mentioned that in Vedic culture, it would be not just in Vedic culture, but it is barbaric to kill cows. I used the term barbaric. And I think I said subhuman or not human, something like that. And I noticed one man and one lady walked out. I don't know if it was related to that. It wasn't? How do you know?
I think they just came in to sort of see the deities take darshan and they left.
All right, anyway.
Coincided with what you were
Maybe.
saying.
It's quite likely. But the thing is, in regards to this question specifically, well, in other words, I'm sure a lot of people, when they hear that, like barbaric, and something really strong about killing cows, they would think, wow, what? That's extreme. However, if you were following that, the verses and the discussions about the verses, it says there quite clearly that people who killed cows, the punishment, there was death penalty for them, just as for humans. That was the standard. And therefore, these Shonaka and the Rishis, that's what they were used to. That was just the norm. Yeah, that people would just immediately get the death penalty and that's it, goodbye, finished. So therefore, they were, you've used the word astonished, maybe that's the right word. Let me just check it. 116:5, just bear with me. 116:5, right, Shonaka. Why did Maharaj Parikshit simply punish him, since he was the lowest of the Sudras? Yeah, so Shonaka and the Rishis were astonished to hear that he simply punished him and didn't kill him. And Prabhupada says, this suggests that a pious king like Parikshit should have at once killed an offender who wanted to cheat the public by dressing like a king, and at the same time daring to insult the purest of the animals, a cow. Yeah. And the rishis in those days could not imagine in these days of Kali Yuga that the lowest of Sudras get elected to being, some big government officer, even the president or prime minister. And, yeah. And will open organized slaughterhouses for killing cows. Those rishis, they couldn't imagine, because their standards were so much higher. I don't know if you keep up with the news at all, but I noticed, like this year, on a few occasions, there were news reports that I saw where people eating like cockroaches and other, like somewhat sizable insects. And there was, statements like, it's nutritionally very good for you or something.
High protein.
Yeah. And I saw that a few times. I saw that. And it's like, what has happened to the human race. Yeah. Because it's just, I mean, it's just crazy. It's just so, yeah. But it appears some number of people think it's fine, no problem. I remember actually many years ago, like in the 80s, we were considering buying another farm around KwaZulu-Natal somewhere. So I was going out looking at, just a few places. I went to a number of places actually. So one place, there was a farm, and I went there, and the people showed me around, and they had I don't know what you would say, but like a pen, not big, like maybe the size of one of these rugs, but sort of bordered in with a wall, like this high around it, and covered, I think, but you could see in. And inside was, devotees, fasten your seatbelts, a whole lot of snails. And of course I'd heard of the French eating snails, but I'd never seen anything to do with it. And so I asked them, I asked them, what's the story? And they said, yeah, well, they eat them. Some people are just off the scale. So, yeah. But anyway, the point was about not killing Kali. And the rishis, the word Prabhupada uses here is, Shaunak and the rishis were astonished that Parikshit simply punished him and didn't kill him, because it was just the normal thing that someone who does something like that, first of all, he's like a big fraud dressed as a king. And secondly, he's killing, or, in the process of killing a bull and a cow. So, by those standards, it was just the normal thing. That people who do things like that, they're just, what is the term? Summarily executed. Means just turn around, execute. No big trial and lawyers and back and forth and appealing. And, sometimes 20 years later, the murderer is executed. Yeah. So, anyway, there you go. That was the standard. And you might, like I said, some people would think, many people would think if they heard that it's extreme. Or even they'd think it's too extreme. But actually it's a normal standard according to real human standards, which are very few and far between these days. So in the verse before that, 116.4, Maharaj Parikshit is referred to as the representative of the Lord in the purport. My question is, in those times, were all the kings considered to be the representative of the Lord, or is it just Parikshit, Maharaj Parikshit? Okay, well, that's a fair question. Generally they were expected to be, and many of them were up to that standard of like very advanced devotional service and highly knowledgeable in the standards of Scripture and the standards of the Lord. But, for example, just before that, before the Battle of Kurukshetra, Duryodhana was effectively ruling the world when the Pandavas were exiled. So, and he was not a representative of the Lord. He was more or less an atheist, or at least he didn't accept Krishna as the Supreme Lord. You remember there's the pastime. It's in Mahabharata of how Krishna came to negotiate peace for the last time. He tried a few times, but the last time just before the battle. And Duryodhana was not willing to discuss it. And he called his soldiers and said, arrest him, Krishna, arrest Krishna, lock him up. So they went to arrest him, and Krishna displayed his universal form. And they, you probably remember from Bhagavad Gita how Arjuna was shocked in the extreme to see the universal form. So these soldiers were shocked even more than Arjuna, because they're not, as tough Kshatriyas as him. A lot of those soldiers were just Sudras, actually. They weren't real Kshatriyas. So, yeah, they were just shocked, and they ran. And they told Duryodhana, we can't arrest him, he's Vishnu. Look, because everyone could see the universal form. And Duryodhana said, he is not Vishnu. It's just in his previous life, he performed great austerities, so now he's got some mystical powers, Krishna. So he was definitely not a representative of the Lord. Although Prabhupada makes the point that just in terms of law and order, he was very good. And even, Prabhupada makes the point more or less that there was no need to remove him. Krishna wanted Yudhisthira to rule and the Pandavas to rule. But Prabhupada says, from the point of view of just law and order and keeping society working and punishing the criminals and all that, there was no need to remove Duryodhana because he was very good at it. But the problem was he was not a devotee. He was anti-Krishna. So the kings generally would be, at least sort of up to that time, or, up to around about that time, it was unusual to have a king who was not like a good representative of the Lord, meaning a good devotee and really conversant with the laws of Dharma. Yeah, but occasionally you'd get these people, somehow they'd take over, but they wouldn't be qualified like that. Like you probably heard of Vena, who was sort of the father of Maharaj Prithu. Vena's father was a great devotee, but Vena, who then became king, he was a demon. I mean, really, really, much worse than Duryodhana. Yeah. So the Brahmins killed him by mantra. They cursed him and he just dropped dead. So the thing is that generally the kings were like that, and it was just the normal standard. They were expected to be like that. But sometimes you get these ones who were not like that. Yeah. And Duryodhana was definitely one of those who was not qualified, but Parikshit was definitely very, very qualified as the representative of the Lord. Okay, Draupadi didn't want Ashvatthama to be killed, but Krishna and others wanted him to be killed following the religious principle. Srila Prabhupada in the commentary mentioned, quote, women as a class are no better than boys, and therefore they have no discriminatory power like that of a man. Did you know that? Anyway, without commenting on that particularly, the actual question is, then why did Arjuna only take out the jewel from Ashvatthama's head and not kill him in order to satisfy Draupadi? Okay, and not kill him. Because Draupadi didn't want him killed. You know, I mean, you should read these things more carefully, actually, whoever asked the question. You really should. Because there's a description of that whole incident going over, I don't know, a chapter or a good part of a chapter or something like that. And there's this whole discussion in which Krishna said to kill him. Krishna said to kill him. And Arjuna said to kill him. But then there was this discussion back and forth. And then the consensus was to not kill him physically, but cut off the jewel from his head, which was worse than killing him. Because people like that, you know, he was half Kshatriya, half Brahmin, but he was more Kshatriya than Brahmin. And so to be killed for a Kshatriya in, you know, like a legitimate battle situation, it's not something very shocking. Yeah, they would just take it without protesting or, you know, whatever. So, yeah, so there was a discussion. Embarrassment for Kshatriyas would be worse than death. Worse. Death would be just like, you know, it's Kshatriya Dharma, I accept it. But being made like a fool, just a real fool, that would be worse than dying. There's a saying, I don't know if you've heard it before. When living becomes worse than dying, then revolution can happen. You heard that one? It's a good one. When living becomes worse than dying, then revolution can happen. Otherwise, you know, revolution means there's a pretty good chance you're going to be killed. Yeah. Anyway, that's sort of by the way. So yeah, that was the point there. There was this whole discussion, and different of them changed their positions in the course of the discussion. Yeah. Including Krishna. Yeah. Including Krishna. And so the consensus, the agreement amongst everyone at the end was cut the jewel off his head. In other words, embarrass him like really badly, but don't kill his body. Because, well, I mean, one of the becauses was mentioned, there is no injunction for killing the body of a Brahmin. And his father was a Brahmin. I mean, Brahmin Kshatriya, but still, you know, Brahmin was there. So there's no injunction for killing the body of a Brahmin. Yeah. Right. Kunti had all her children from different demigods, but Kunti is always considered chaste. Kindly explain it. Yeah. Yeah, so she had the children by different demigods, but it was like a mystical, they were mystical conceptions. They weren't normal conceptions. But the first one was a Karuna, whose father was the sun god. And she did feel that, I've been unchaste. And so therefore she sort of disposed of Karuna, kind of. Because, she didn't want to be found out for being unchaste. But then the others, it was accepted. The other ones. Yamaraj was the father of Yudhisthira, Vayu the father of Bhima, and Indra, right, the father of Arjuna. Just the three of them. The other two, Nakula and Sahadev, they were the sons of Madri. Right. So the bull, who is religion personified, got influenced by Maya and did not say who had cut his legs. Now look, you got to read these things more carefully. That is not correct. It's just not correct. It's not stated there like that. In fact, because he wouldn't identify who cut his legs, according to the verses and Prabhupada and Maharaj Parikshit, it showed his extreme not being influenced by Maya, that he was just, fixed in a very high level of Krishna conscious understanding. Yeah. So, but anyway, then you go on. Do devotees get influenced by Maya because Krishna wants it to happen? Sometimes it happens. It's not that every time a devotee gets influenced by Maya, that's because Krishna wanted it to happen. Generally it's because the devotee wanted it to happen. But it happens sometimes that some special devotee gets influenced by Maya when Krishna wants to make a point or do something. And classic example is Arjuna and Bhagavad Gita. But then the other classic example, maybe not as well known in those terms, is Parikshit becoming influenced by Maya, or Yudhisthira becoming influenced by Maya, by Krishna's arrangement, for specific purposes. Parikshit, so Bhagavatam could be spoken to a suitable audience, rather than just anyone, just, hey, I want to speak Srimad Bhagavatam to you. But some really, super suitable person. And Yudhisthira, Krishna wanted Bhishma to be glorified for his knowledge of Dharma, Kshatriya Dharma. Yeah, because Yudhisthira was just going to start ruling, like the next day, sort of thing. Yeah, so Krishna wanted Bhishma to be glorified for helping Yudhisthira like that. And so therefore Yudhisthira became bewildered, thinking that, not according to Kshatriya Dharma, thinking that, all the people who died in the battle, they died just so he could become the king and become rich and famous and powerful. But it was the plan of the Lord. So therefore the Lord put him into that illusion so Bhishma could straighten him out, which he did. Right. Everything happens by the will of the Lord. Yeah. Some things happen by our will, but the Lord allows them to happen. Yeah. So it's not. And so then you go on to say, so why is it said that we have free will? So the thing is, we do have free will. Yeah. And so sometimes something happens because we want it to happen. I mean, particularly some nonsense, if you're talking about devotees being influenced by Maya, then, in these very special cases, they become influenced by Maya, by Krishna's arrangement. But otherwise, generally, if or when a devotee gets influenced by Maya, it's just their own stupidity. But Krishna allows it to happen. Sometimes Krishna tries to stop it from happening. Sometimes he does stop it from happening. But in many cases, he doesn't just completely come jumping into the situation and just stop it. Yeah. Okay, so now that's 8. There's another. Those are the Bhakti Vaibhava ones. Here's some general ones. And I thought there was, I think there is. Yeah, okay, here's another one from Bhakti Vaibhava. But now this is from the 6th canto. Anyway, we can try and answer it. In our Krishna consciousness movement, fashionable persons are taught to adopt one fashion, the dress of a Vaishnava with a shaved head and tilak. They're taught to be always clean in mind, dress, and eating in order to be fixed in Krishna consciousness. What is the use of changing one's dress? Sometimes wearing long hair and a long beard, and sometimes dressing otherwise. Someone has a bee under their body, a bonnet. Oh yes, oh yes. This is not good. Well, you've answered it then. This is not good. One should not waste his time in such frivolous activities. One should always be fixed in Krishna consciousness and take the cure of devotional service with firm determination. And then it has become common practice in ISKCON for men to wear long hair and beards. And devotees eat, or common practice for devotees to eat at karmi restaurants freely. They wear non-Vaishnav dress even amongst devotees and temples. This is freely accepted in ISKCON now, even by leaders. How important is it that these principles are followed, and does it make any difference to one's Krishna consciousness to be cleanly shaven, etc., or is this just external, so it can be discarded? No, well, you've got a bee under your bonnet. And, in many ways, it's not unreasonable. Yeah, but Prabhupada did not mind. In fact, he advocated that for devotees like men, particularly obviously, who have to work because of family responsibilities, that they can, Prabhupada said, present themselves as gentlemen, nicely dressed and with short hair, not, like beards. He was not into beards. But it's a fact that, some devotees, I've seen, some devotees who I know personally for many years, who are householders, young men, and they used to have short hair and be clean shaven because of their work situation and all. But now they've got long hair and beds. Today we saw. Yeah. So, you say it's freely accepted even by the leaders. We would much rather the devotees are more conservative in these respects, but, as householders, they have a certain degree of freedom. And, we don't want to be like policemen that when your hair gets over, some length, so whenever you come to the temple, we get the ruler out and measure it. And then, you're in trouble. Or we just drag you one side, pull out the electric buzzer and buzz them. But it would be better. It would definitely be better. That's a fact. Yeah, okay. So that's not, you see, Kasturi Manjari, it's not a Bhakti Vaibhava question. That's from the 6th canto. And, it's just someone's gripe, really. And reasonable gripe in certain respects. Okay, let's go on now to our general questions. What to do when the other family members don't respect that you need to offer everything to Krishna before eating? Well, I'd say, what I'd say, first of all, depends who the family members are. If they're your parents or your brothers, your sisters, those types of family members, I'd say, what I'd say? Move out. Yeah, get your own place. If they're not respecting you and, your Krishna consciousness, and because it's a form of abuse. So you don't want to live under circumstances where you're being abused. It's just not right. I mean, it's not right, but it's just stupid, actually. Yeah. So, if you're working and like that, you have an income, that means you're a big boy now, or you're a big girl. Yeah, you can go get your own place. Why not? And you should do that. Now, of course, if it's your husband or your wife, or maybe even your children, then it's a different situation. You shouldn't just move out from them unless it really becomes really drastic. So then I would say you need to very nicely but very firmly tell them that this is my standard, and I respect your standards, and I'm with you. We're in the same team, so just be nice to me also. Yeah. Is Krishna consciousness the solution for Kali Yuga? You got some other suggestion? Donald Trump? Mr. Putin? Rishi Sunak, at least he's been to the temple and he's apparently quite positively inclined to Krishna consciousness. But these people are not the solution for Kali Yuga. Krishna consciousness is. If so, how to preach this message to people? It's not a big mystery. First thing would be try and distribute Prabhupada's books, and then try and explain to people, generally starting, just generally, with Bhagavad Gita, how we're not these bodies, we're eternal spirit souls. And so to be caught up in all the nonsense of Kali Yuga, it's just not for us. Yeah. And, our preaching, we have big preaching programs where there's many people at one time in one place. But Krishna consciousness, getting people to become devotees, it's usually one person at a time. Yeah, not just, the whole lot. You become Hare Krishna devotees. It generally doesn't work like that. It takes a deeper type of conviction for people to become Krishna conscious. Is it obligatory to pronounce mantras aloud? We chant Maha Mantra aloud, but Gayatri mantras silently. Is it enough to pronounce them in the mind when we offer the 16 upachars when bathing deities and offer bhoga? Is it benefitless if in the mind? All Gayatri mantras must be chanted only within the mind unless they're being given to someone at the time of Brahminical initiation. Yeah. And then only if, you have the service of the spiritual master, you have the service of giving them and initiating people. Otherwise, Gayatri mantras should always be chanted within the mind. Otherwise, we hear that they have no effect if they chant it out loud, unless you're giving them under, appropriate circumstances. Yeah. So therefore, definitely it's best, in the process of deity worship to to chant them within the mind. So, okay, second to last question. I took initiation from His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj. Recently, I took Brahminical initiation from another bona fide guru in ISKCON in India. So now should I worship both gurus on the home altar or only one guru? If only one guru, then whose picture should be kept on the altar? Generally speaking, not always, but generally, when a devotee is in a situation like that, one of the two will mean the most to them. Yeah. So that's an important consideration. But the thing is, also therefore, it's accepted within ISKCON that devotees in that sort of situation, they can put on the altar the picture of whoever sort of means the most to them. But in a sort of strictly technical sense, when you're going on the altar, like in an ISKCON temple where you have to be second initiated, and you're doing things which require second initiation, then definitely a very strong argument can be made that the picture of the person who gave the second initiation should be on the altar because, you are engaged in activity under that person, activities which you were given, you could say, or allowed to do by that person. Yeah. But otherwise, you can keep both pictures on the altar, and that may be the most, safe is not really the right word, but just the most appropriate thing to do. Yeah. How to increase our devotion? Last question. Yeah. How to increase your devotion? Well, I would say, there's a number of things we could say, but I would say, first consideration, would be really try to chant without offenses. If you really try to do that and you work on it and you're becoming, more successful like that, then you are increasing your devotion. There's no doubt about it. And seeing chanting is the most essential part of Krishna consciousness. That is a pretty good place to start when it comes to increasing our devotion. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.